Oh, friend, do you have a will? Do you have an inclination? Do you have your own desires? Of course we do. And what do we do? What do we do with our wills? Well, Jesus gives us just a beautiful, glorious example in today's passage. This one's not easy, friends. Let's go ahead and read and we'll unpack it. Luke chapter 22, starting at verse 39. And he came out and went, and as was his custom, to the Mount of Olives, and the disciples followed him. And when he came to the place, he said to them, "Pray that you may not enter into temptation." And he withdrew from them about a stone's throw, and knelt down and prayed, saying, "Father, if you are willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done." And there appeared to him an angel from heaven, strengthening him. And being in agony, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat became like great drops of blood falling down to the ground. And when he rose from prayer, he came to the disciples and found them sleeping for sorrow. And he said to them, "Why are you sleeping? Rise and pray that you may not enter into temptation." All right, friends. Well, I tackled this pretty much like every other lesson in this particular study by asking those detective questions. Who do we see in this passage? Of course, we see Jesus and the disciples, but we also see the Father and we see an angel. So this is pretty interesting. When does this take place? We are still in the evening of the Passover meal, that Thursday evening. Where? Well, the meal was celebrated in that upper room in Jerusalem, but Jesus came out and went to the Mount of Olives, which Luke tells us, as was his custom. And we know that all week long he would go into Jerusalem, go into the temple, and he would teach there at the temple very publicly, but then he would retreat, he would leave and go to this place in the Mount of Olives. Friends, I do oftentimes use a Bible app called Maps. It's just Bible Maps, and you can look this up and read more about the Mount of Olives. And if you've ever been to Jerusalem or made that trip to Israel, it is beautiful. It's just outside of Jerusalem, and we saw it. We saw it at the very beginning of our study in Luke chapter 19, as Jesus came in, as he was making his entry into Jerusalem on that donkey. Everyone was celebrating and rejoicing. He comes through the Mount of Olives, and he comes to the stellar view. There's just this stellar view of the city, and it must have been that much more glorious back in the day when Jesus walked on earth. And you might remember, what did Jesus do there? He wept. We saw him weep over the city. His heart is for the people. His heart is for those who are far away from him. And that's it's a big part of why he does the work that he is doing. All right, that's a lot about the where. So now Jesus and the disciples are on the Mount of Olives, in a special place that Jesus liked to go. Oh, just one other thought about the Mount of Olives is its name. Olives, olive trees grew there, and it doesn't look anything like it did when Jesus walked on earth. We can imagine that there were groves of olive trees, and another name for it was Mount of Oil. And here is where the olives would be pressed to glean the oil from them. Friends, it's fragrant. It's very fragrant. The fruit of the olive trees is fragrant, and and the fruit that, or the fruit of the oil and the fragrance that is emitted from the olives when they are pressed is utterly delightful. All right, I don't know if that was really, maybe I just took us on a bunny rabbit trail. Sorry for that. But there are, I don't know, I was struck when I had the opportunity to go to Israel and see the olive trees. I talk about it in the beginning of the book. Friends, these trees look like they are in agony. They look like they are being pressed. And such a picture, was such a visual of what Jesus went through in this place. All right, so what did Jesus go through in this place? Well, the main topic seems to be prayer. We have prayed, prayer, pray. It's mentioned 5 times in this short passage. Jesus goes to this place to pray. And number 1, he asks his disciples to pray, right? It's not a little ask. He says, look, you must pray. And so we have to ask that question, why? Why must they pray? He says, so that you do not enter, or you may not enter into temptation. Friends, what is temptation? Temptation is an examination with the express purpose of producing a fault in the examinee. And we know Jesus has already told Peter, look, Satan has asked to sift you like wheat, to shake you up. Satan wants to see Peter fall. He wants to see all of the disciples fall. They are going to be sorely tempted to walk away from Jesus here. Pray that you may not enter into temptation. Jesus is saying you must pray. And then what happens? Well, Jesus withdraws by himself. Luke says about a stone's throw away, he knelt down and he himself prayed. All right, so we need to look at why Jesus prays and how Jesus prays. In some ways, I think Jesus is also praying that he might not enter into temptation, that he might not enter into his own will, but that he would stay surrendered to his Father's will. We see some cross references to this word. Let's see. Am I going to be able to find it? Yes, Matthew 4:11. Then the devil left him, and behold, angels came and were ministering to him. This is when Jesus was fasting in the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights. He was tempted, right? He was tempted. So yes, Jesus faced temptation too, but as we know from other scripture, he was without sin. How did Jesus do this? Oh, friends, he knelt down and he prayed. And he prayed how? He prayed in agony and he prayed earnestly. Those were 2 words that jumped out to me. In agony, he is in extreme distress of body or mind. How much agony? Luke tells us that his sweat became like great drops of blood falling down to the ground. Friends, this is agony indeed, extreme distress of body or mind. And he prays earnestly. It says, verse 44, and he, being in agony, he prayed more earnestly in a very, very serious manner. He was praying He was praying for so much. I wanted to say he was praying for his life, but he was praying for our lives as well. Friends, there's so much here. Let's unpack Jesus's prayer so that we can better understand what he asks and who he asks as he prays. Friends, right off the bat, we see that Jesus prays to his Father. And here is a reminder to us that Jesus is indeed the Son of God. Like if we just stop and sit in that and let that sink in, here is the Son of God praying in agony, praying earnestly to his Father. So here's his prayer. He says, "If you are willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done." So I found that interesting. If you are willing, and I wondered, what was this request like for the Father? What was this request like? Father, if you are willing, I don't know what to do with that. I just wondered, was he weeping? Was all of heaven weeping as Jesus prays in agony and so beautifully surrendering his will? Father, if you are willing. And we see that the Father does see him, does know him, and sends an angel. An angel, friends, is a supernatural being created by God to serve God, often functions as a messenger. And I already read one of the cross references for that, Matthew 4:11. And then Hebrews 1:14. Are they not all ministering spirits sent out to serve for the sake of those who are to inherit salvation? This is all about life, friends. This is all about salvation and our salvation. All right. Going on, if you are willing, Jesus says, remove. And again, this is an imperative here. Jesus is saying, Father, you must remove. You must take this away. Again, I can only imagine the heart of the Father. Jesus is in agony. Our Father, our Heavenly Father, would have been in agony too. What do we see? We see Jesus, nevertheless, not my will, Father, not my will, but yours be done. That's an imperative too. Father, your will, it must be done. And Jesus surrenders. He lets go. He really lets go of his own will, his own inclination, his own life. In this moment, he surrenders to his Father. He surrenders to the Father's will. It's pretty profound, friends. It's pretty profound. We could end there, and that's really my focus for today. Here's what I put down for the main point. After the Passover meal, which Jesus, I was just remembering, Jesus had earnestly desired to share that with his disciples. He goes out to his usual place on the Mount of Olives, and he prays in agony. He prays in agony that he might not enter into temptation, but that the Father's will would be done. Father, your will must be done. And friends, we could go on and talk about the disciples. Jesus found them sleeping for sorrow. They are sorrowful as well. But I do think that there is a call here just because of Jesus's imperative to them. He says, once again, pray. You must pray that you may not enter into temptation. So a number of different applications for today, friends. Here's where I went. I went with pray. You must pray, Carmen. You must pray. Why? That you might not enter into temptation. Friends, here's how we can pray for one another. And then if Jesus prays for the Father's will to be done, oh friends, that ought to be our prayer as well, that we would surrender our will to our Father's will. that his will might be done on earth as it is in heaven. Yes, the Lord's Prayer is here. The last part of the Lord's Prayer, this is Matthew chapter 6, verse 13, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. There's a reason why Jesus taught us to pray as he did. Oh, friends, let us surrender our will. Let us have hearts unified, minds unified, souls unified with Jesus, that we might be one with him, one with our Father, one with the Spirit, and that God's will would be done on earth as it is in heaven.